Greetings. My name is Linden Sturgis, and I would like to share with you today some of my findings from the research that I've been doing recently and over the years. Topics that have fascinated me since my college days have been the nature of the human being, of the incredible variety of animals, and of evolution. It was distressing for me to hear at that time B.F. Skinner's message that human freedom and human dignity were illusions, or when I later heard that animals and humans were nothing but elaborate machines for passing on genes. Then, to my surprise and to my great interest, I discovered that there were other serious scientists whose research in human and animal morphology was uncovering many phenomena that led to quite a different picture of life and how it evolved. It appeared that in addition to the outer mechanical forces that shaped and molded how animals evolved, there were other principles of growth and development inherent in human beings. To be sure, adaptation through natural selection modified organisms, but it became ever clearer to me that there were dynamic internal factors at work in animals, and that discovering these principles would potentially complete the picture that Darwin had begun to sketch. What I was discovering in biologists such as Bulk, Schad, Kipp, Kreinig, and Verhulst was truly astounding, and I felt that the new paradigm needed to be more widely known. It was, in fact, this feeling that led me to make this presentation on the nature of the human being, of animals, and evolution. I am just a teacher and an amateur researcher, but I think that some of the findings that I've come to are of great importance and worth sharing. One of the pictures that I came to early on was this one, of the embryological development of animals. We see here 8 different animals, from the fish, the salamander, the tortoise, the chick, all the way up to the human being. We see 3 phases of their embryological and fetal development in the 3 rows. We see in the top row the embryos of the 8 organisms are very similar. In the second row, we see that the fish and the salamander have begun to differentiate, and that the other organisms have also changed, but not nearly as much. And then finally, in the third row, we see the fish emerging gradually into its final fish form, likewise with the salamander, while the tortoise is developing its shell, the chick its beak, and we see that the hog, calf, rabbit, and human are developing substantially as well, with the human showing its enlarged head. This picture fascinated me and puzzled me, and would be one of the pictures that would eventually lead me down many roads of research in trying to understand what is going on in human and animal evolution. Another picture, like this one, that I saw in various forms. Here we see the human being compared to the chimpanzee. We note that the human child, most of its characteristics are retained in the adult. The flat face, the vertical forehead, the rounded cranium are retained to a great degree in the adult. I was then astonished when I looked at drawings and photographs of the newborn chimp and saw that it shared so many characteristics with the human child. The flat face, the upright vertical forehead, the rounded cranium. But what a difference we find in the adult chimpanzee. The flat face is lost. The forehead slopes backwards, and the cranium now is in back of the eye socket area instead of above it. This picture also intrigued and puzzled me. A further characteristic of humans and animals that was drawn to my attention was that of the placement of the foramen magnum, which is that great hole on the underside of the skull where the spinal column emerges up into the brain. The foramen magnum, that great hole in the human being, in the human adult, is in the center of the underside of the skull, so that the head rests in a balanced way on the vertebral column. In the human infant, it is there also, right in the center of the skull. In the infant chimpanzee, it is in that same position, right near the center of the skull. But as the chimp grows, in its first weeks, months, and years, the foramen magnum slowly moves backwards toward the rear of the skull. Here we see, in this drawing, three animals. We see the dog in the top two there, the chimpanzee, and then the human being. We can see that the foramen magnum in the dog, right there at the very end, is extremely far back. In the chimpanzee, it is somewhat far back. And in the adult human, here on the bottom, we see that it is in the center. But what is remarkable is that in the infant chimpanzee, this opening is in a similar position to the infant human, and that it slowly moves backwards away from its original primal position. It turns out that this is the case also in other anthropoid apes and other primates in general. Another feature that is well known also came to my attention. This was the fact that the human being is, on the whole, hairless. We have light body hair, and of course hair on our heads, our armpits, and the pubic area. But when we look at the human infant and compare it to the chimpanzee infant, we notice again something remarkable. In the chimpanzee, when it is not yet born and in its fetal condition, like the human fetus, it does not have hair on its body. It has, to begin with, hair on its head like humans do, and as it matures, it gradually gets hair on the upper lip and on the face, where adult males of many races grow a mustache and beard. And then, when the chimpanzee is born, it slowly develops its full coat of fur. At first, the hair is very light on the chest and abdomen and on the inside of the thighs. But then the full coat of hair develops. This was another characteristic that puzzled me. Perhaps it was opposite of what I'd expected. And it certainly made me wonder when I first became aware of it. I was then led to the concept of fetalization, the idea that an organism can retain fetal characteristics right into adulthood. We can see in the cases that I've cited that in many respects the human being is fetalized. We retain the form of the skull, the position of the foramen magnum, the hairless body, and many other characteristics that we will hear about. This is often called neoteny in the literature. It can also be called pedomorphism, which means youthful form. But I will be calling it fetalization. So these are some characteristics that made me wonder and made me question some of the things that I'd understood of standard evolutionary theory. I then began to question whether the otherwise brilliant explanation that Darwin gave for evolution, that of random variation and natural selection, wasn't just one side of what brought about evolution. And so it was incomplete. It was also during my college years that I met the scientific writings of Goethe, the great German poet and scientist. Goethe's work immediately appealed to me as it appeared to offer an approach to knowledge of nature that overcame the duality between thinking and the outer appearances of the sense world. The pure empiricism that denied or at least overlooked as insignificant the inner nature of the human being and the rest of nature seemed one-sided to the young college student. So an approach that involved the whole human being looked promising. Goethe was a pre-Darwinian who was one of the first to view evolution as reality, but who saw the causes of evolution to be more than just mechanical. Goethe was well known in scientific circles for his groundbreaking work in botany. In his publication called The Metamorphosis of Plants, he demonstrated that all parts of plants are modifications of the same organ. For example, sepals are modified leaves, as are petals and even stamen. This is now referred to in botany as the homology of plant parts. He also came to a cognitive experience of what he called the archetypal plant, the basic plan that is the basis for all plant forms, which is morphed in innumerable ways throughout the plant kingdom. In his study of animals, Goethe considered their skeletons to be the key to their overall form. So he collected and investigated in museums a wide range of skeletons from throughout the animal kingdom. He saw that the form of mammals was based on the same structural plan, but that each modified this plan by emphasizing one or more organs while letting other organs play a subsidiary role. He arrived in his investigations at the type or archetypal animal, which could be found in each animal, but in a specialized way. Once the scientist discovers this bow plan, it can be found in all animals. My study during college of Goethe's approach to plant and animal morphology was the beginning of a lifelong pursuit of the laws that are active in living nature. I soon became aware that a whole current of evolutionary thought by scientists in Europe had carried the Goethean approach to morphology much further and was leading to very interesting results. In this presentation, I will be sharing with you some of the results of this further development of morphological studies from the Goethean perspective. To give this presentation some focus, I will base it principally on the research of the Belgian teacher Jos Verhulst that we find in his book Developmental Dynamics in Humans and Other Primates. Verhulst uses comparative morphology to discover the heterochronic growth and development patterns in human beings and the primates. His approach gives us a fresh understanding of the nature of the human being and animals, and also brings us important new perspectives on evolution. The approaches of other Goethean scientists throw additional light on these questions, but they will need to be left out of this current presentation due to lack of time. I hope that you will be as intrigued as I have been with the new picture and understanding we can have of the nature of the human being, of animals, and of evolution.